Trevor Lawrence, the young and rising star quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars, sat across from the talk show host. The spotlight was on him as the live TV audience waited in anticipation. "Trevor," the host said, his tone sharp, "you've had an incredible career, but some people believe athletes like you should do more with their platforms. You've stayed largely silent on political and social issues. What do you say to those who think you're avoiding your responsibility?" The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Trevor. What happened next? It stunned everyone. Trevor Lawrence had always been a player who let his actions speak for him. Since entering the NFL, his on-field brilliance had already earned him a reputation as one of the most talented young quarterbacks in the league. But off the field, Trevor was known for his quiet demeanor and humble approach. He wasn't one for the spotlight outside of the game itself. As a rising star in the NFL, Trevor was aware that athletes were often expected to use their platforms to speak out on political and social issues. Yet, he had always chosen to focus on his craft, on football, and on making a difference in other, quieter ways. He had been heavily involved in charity work, particularly in helping underprivileged youth and supporting his community, but he never sought to make a spectacle of it. To Trevor, his actions spoke louder than any tweet or public statement ever could. The pressure to speak out had grown steadily over the years. The media constantly pushed for athletes to become more than just role models on the field. They had to be social advocates in a highly polarized society. Yet, Trevor stayed true to his roots, choosing to lead by example rather than by the volume of his voice. But when he was invited on a popular late-night talk show, he knew that the interview would likely stray into territory that would test his commitment to his values. He expected the usual questions about his career, his goals, and his recent performances. What he didn't expect was a direct challenge that would force him to defend his personal philosophy. As the host, famous for stirring up controversy, turned to him with a pointed question, Trevor's calm demeanor was about to be tested. "Trevor," the host began, his voice slightly condescending, "you've built an incredible career, but you've stayed largely silent on major issues. Don't you think athletes like you have a responsibility to speak out? I mean, you're a public figure now. Why stay silent?" The room grew tense as everyone waited for Trevor's response. The question had been framed in a way that left no easy escape. Trevor knew this wasn't about football anymore. This was a test of character, one he wasn't willing to fail. The host's question hung in the air, the tension palpable. The audience was silent, waiting to see how Trevor would react. The tone of the question, though polite, had an underlying challenge, an expectation that Trevor should be politically vocal. For a moment, Trevor didn't respond. He simply sat there, gathering his thoughts. He could feel the weight of the question pressing on him, but Trevor was no stranger to pressure. He had been through his fair share of intense moments on the field. This, however, was different. The host, eager to fill the silence, leaned in. "Trevor, do you think your silence is part of the problem?" he pressed. "It's not enough to just be a great quarterback. You're a role model to so many. Why not use your platform to speak on the issues of today?" The words stung, but Trevor remained composed. He knew the host's intention, to provoke, to get a rise out of him. But Trevor wasn't about to fall into that trap. He leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but calm. "Look, I get it. I understand why people expect athletes to speak up on everything. But let's get one thing straight. I don't owe anyone an explanation for how I choose to use my platform." The host narrowed his eyes, sensing that Trevor wasn't going to give the answer he wanted. "So you're just going to stay silent while the world around you is changing?" he asked, clearly trying to stir up more. Trevor's voice didn't waver. "I'm not silent. I choose to make a difference in ways that matter to me. Some people choose to speak out, others choose to act. For me, it's always been about leading through actions, not words." The host, taken aback by Trevor's firm but respectful response, paused. The audience shifted uncomfortably, realizing this wasn't the typical confrontation they had come to expect from talk show interviews. Trevor had not backed down. He had simply stayed true to his convictions, and in doing so, had taken control of the narrative. "I don't need to be loud to be heard," Trevor continued. "I believe in doing my part, helping my community, supporting causes that matter, and being a good example. That's how I use my platform." The silence in the room grew thicker. The host, now at a loss for words, glanced nervously at the crowd. The room was still. The host, who had anticipated a dramatic back and forth, was left speechless. His attempt to provoke Trevor Lawrence into a heated exchange had completely backfired. Trevor's response had been so calm, so assured, that it left no room for argument. He wasn't going to play the game the host had set up for him. Instead, he stood firm in his beliefs, that actions, not words, defined true leadership. The host, visibly caught off guard, opened his mouth to speak, but paused. The words didn't come. He had asked the question, but Trevor had flipped the script with such clarity that the conversation no longer felt like an interview. It felt like a lesson in humility. The silence stretched on for a few moments, long enough to be uncomfortable for everyone involved. The audience, which had been expecting a fiery exchange, now found themselves in awe of Trevor's poise. Finally, the host broke the silence, his voice faltering slightly. I guess that's one way to look at it," he said, trying to recover from the unexpected turn of events. But it was clear to everyone that the moment had already passed. Trevor had won the conversation, without raising his voice or playing into the drama the media had hoped to create. The crowd's response was slow at first, but then the applause started. It wasn't the typical polite applause you get after a show. This was different. This was a genuine respect, a recognition that Trevor had just made a powerful statement without needing to engage in the usual media circus. As the host awkwardly shuffled the conversation to a close, Trevor simply sat back in his chair, a slight smile on his face. He wasn't there to argue. He wasn't there to convince anyone. He was just there to be himself. And as the interview wrapped up, the clip of his response was already making its way across the internet. Within minutes, it was shared thousands of times, sparking a wave of support from fans, athletes, and public figures alike. Trevor Lawrence had, with one simple answer, turned the entire narrative around. The host's attempt to create drama? It was completely overshadowed by the quiet power of Trevor's response. The video of Trevor Lawrence's calm yet powerful response quickly spread across the sports world, and within hours, it was a topic of intense discussion. Fans, media outlets, and even celebrities couldn't stop talking about how Trevor had handled the confrontation with such poise. Sports analysts, who were accustomed to covering heated debates and controversial opinions, shifted their focus to Trevor's actions. The narrative of athletes needing to take a public stance on every issue suddenly felt outdated. "Trevor Lawrence just proved that leadership isn't about being the loudest person in the room," said one prominent sports analyst. "True leadership is about standing your ground, sticking to your principles, and letting your actions do the talking." NFL players from across the league weighed in, showing their support for Trevor's measured approach. "Respect to Trevor Lawrence for handling that question like a pro," tweeted Patrick Mahomes. "You don't have to be loud to make an impact. Actions speak louder." Aaron Donald, known for his dominance on the field, expressed similar sentiments. "What Trevor did today is exactly how you deal with pressure. He's showing us all that quiet leadership is just as important as any soundbite." The conversation wasn't just limited to the NFL. Athletes from other sports joined the conversation, applauding Trevor for choosing to lead by example rather than giving in to societal pressure to speak out. LeBron James, one of the most outspoken athletes in the world, commented, "Trevor Lawrence just gave us all a lesson in humility and strength. You don't need to be on a soapbox to make a difference. You do it with your actions." Media outlets, which had previously pressured athletes to speak up on social issues, began to rethink their expectations. Maybe it's time we start to reconsider the idea that athletes must constantly weigh in on political debates, one sports journalist wrote. Trevor Lawrence showed us that athletes can be powerful leaders without engaging in every public conversation. The broader sports industry was beginning to shift its focus. Athletes like Trevor, who didn't feel the need to speak on every issue, were now being recognized as true leaders in their own right. And what about the host who had tried to corner Trevor? The interview quickly became the punchline on social media, with many questioning the host's motives and whether this kind of gotcha journalism was still relevant in today's world. Within hours of the interview airing, Trevor Lawrence's response had gone viral. Social media platforms erupted with tweets, posts, and videos celebrating his calm, composed, and powerful stance. The number sign Respect Trevor Lawrence hashtag quickly trended worldwide as fans, celebrities, and even political commentators praised him for leading with integrity. The viral clip of Trevor's response became a symbol of true leadership, one where strength wasn't measured by the loudest voice, but by the ability to remain calm in the face of adversity. One tweet from a popular sports influencer read, "This is how you handle pressure. Trevor Lawrence just showed that leadership isn't about speaking up on everything. It's about using your platform in ways that matter." Respect Trevor Lawrence. Another viral tweet came from a fan. "The world needs more people like Trevor. His actions speak louder than any political speech. Leadership through example, not words. Respect Trevor Lawrence." Athletes from all sports shared their admiration for Trevor's actions. Not every battle needs to be fought with words. Trevor Lawrence just showed the world what true strength looks like, wrote Carmelo Anthony, the NBA star. DeAndre Hopkins, a fellow NFL player, tweeted, "Sometimes silence speaks louder than shouting." Trevor Lawrence just proved that. Even outside the world of sports, people began to rally behind Trevor. An actor known for his roles in socially conscious films posted, "Trevor Lawrence just proved that you don't need to fit into the media's mold to be a great leader. You lead by example, not by getting caught up in the noise." Respect. The response was so overwhelming that even politicians began to chime in. A prominent senator tweeted, "Trevor Lawrence's response to that reporter is the exact kind of leadership we need in today's world. His ability to stay true to himself is more powerful than any public statement. Respect Trevor Lawrence." But the most striking aspect of the reaction was that people started to rethink the pressure placed on athletes. Is it fair to expect them to speak on every issue, or can they simply lead by example in their own ways? Trevor had essentially opened the door to a new discussion about the role of athletes in society, one that didn't demand constant political statements, but allowed for authentic leadership through actions. The response wasn't just a trend, it was a movement, one that questioned the value of loud opinions in a world where quiet strength had the potential to change the narrative. Trevor Lawrence didn't need to shout to be heard. His leadership was defined by actions, not words. By staying true to himself and his values, he showed the world that true strength comes from staying authentic, not conforming to external pressures. What do you think? Should athletes be expected to speak out on every issue, or can they lead in their own way? Trevor showed us that silence doesn't equal ignorance. It can be a powerful tool for change. Comment below. Like, share, and subscribe for more powerful NFL stories.